Jose Naroski once said about the war, "In war, there are no unwounded soldiers." In 1914, Europe was a ticking time bomb. Decades of alliances, rivalries, and an arms race had set the stage. But the spark? The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo by a Serbian nationalist. Austria-Hungary demanded revenge, but what should have been a regional conflict turned into a global disaster. Why? Because leaders used the assassination as an excuse to flex their military muscles and pursue hidden agendas. This wasn't about justice, it was about domination. The real culprit behind World War I? The tangled web of alliances. Europe was divided into two camps. The Allied powers, led by Britain, France, and Russia, and the Central powers, led by Germany and Austria-Hungary. These alliances weren't about peace, they were traps. One small conflict meant everyone got dragged in. Germany backed Austria-Hungary. Russia sided with Serbia. France joined to support Russia. Britain entered to defend Belgium. And just like that, the world was at war. But here's the kicker. Most of these nations didn't even want the war. They just couldn't back down without losing face. Leaders promised their people a quick and glorious war. Instead, soldiers faced horror beyond imagination. Trench warfare turned the Western Front into a living hell. Imagine spending months in freezing mud, surrounded by death, with machine guns mowing down anyone who dared to advance. Chemical weapons like mustard gas were introduced, tools of terror that violated every code of humanity. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, millions of Russian soldiers died in poorly planned campaigns, sacrificed by their own incompetent leaders. This wasn't war. It was a slaughterhouse fueled by arrogance. World War I wasn't just a European disaster. It became a global exploitation. Colonial powers dragged millions from Africa, India, and Asia into their mess, treating them as expendable pawns. Soldiers from colonies fought on distant battlefields for a cause that wasn't even theirs, often facing worse conditions than European troops. At home, women stepped into factories to keep economies afloat, only to be dismissed when the war ended. This was a war that promised unity but delivered division, exploitation, and betrayal. When the guns finally fell silent in 1918, the world wasn't healed, it was scarred. The Treaty of Versailles humiliated Germany, planting the seeds for an even greater conflict. The Ottoman Empire crumbled, leaving the Middle East in chaos, a chaos that still affects us today. Millions of soldiers returned home broken, physically and mentally. And for what? A war that achieved nothing but destruction. As we remember World War I, let's not just focus on the battles. Let's confront the uncomfortable truth. This war wasn't a triumph of humanity. It was a betrayal. History often repeats itself when we fail to learn from it. World War I wasn't just a lesson in warfare. It was a lesson in human failure. So, the next time leaders talk about glory and sacrifice, remember, it's often the common people who pay the ultimate price.